Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Taylor. I'm the Technical Marketing Manager for Civil Survey Solutions, and welcome to our next weekly webcast or technical webcast, AutoCAD Dynamic Blocks 101. Good to see a fair number of you with us today. Today your presenter is going to be Selwyn Pendergast. Selwyn, are you there?
I am, Jonathan, yes.
Selwyn's, as you can see, our application engineer, part of the technical services team. And for those of you that haven't seen his vast range of AutoCAD-based webcasts, as we sort of established last week, he's sort of getting his own playlist, his own series of AutoCAD-based webcasts. And go and have a look on our YouTube channel. But today promises to be a very enlightening webcast on dynamic blocks. So Selwyn, I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and welcome to everyone who's tuned in today. We're going to be looking at Dynamic Blocks 101. So with Dynamic Blocks 101, we're going to look at fairly basic, if you can call Dynamic Blocks basic. We won't be looking at parametrics for the Dynamic Blocks. We'll be covering parametrics in a later session. But with Dynamic Blocks, I'll just change why we use dynamic blocks rather than static normal blocks. When you insert a block into AutoCAD, you only really have the scale factors, the X and Y, and the insertion point. With a dynamic block, we can actually add additional grips to a dynamic block, and therefore we can change its shape, its size, or display. The additional grips can also stretch your block if you need to, rotate, array, flip the geometry. You know, you may have a curb that's on the left-hand side of the road, but it's showing as it's on the right-hand side. You might have a flip object in that curve, and you'll be able to flip it to display the opposite of what it's displaying. You can also add an alignment command to dynamic blocks, and that, like for a sink or some sort of piece of furniture or something that has to go along a line, say a water main, a stop valve or something, they always align with the line work or the pipeline work. We can automatically get the block to come in and align with objects within your drawing. We can add parametrics to dynamic blocks. However, as I said earlier, we won't be looking at parametrics in this session, but when we do the parametrics session, what we learn in the parametrics session will be able to be applied to dynamic blocks. So you can constrain, you may have a rectangle, and if it scales in one direction, it has to be proportional in another or something, or it has to maintain certain sizing of objects in your block. You're able to add parametrics to your block to do that. Okay, so today we're going to have a look at maybe 3 or 4 different dynamic blocks and creating them. What we need to do before we even start working on a dynamic block is to work out the content of the block that we want to do or want to create, and whether it's going to be multiple visibility options or stretching or moving or something like that. We just need to have in our mind how we're going to create the block. Once we've worked out what we're going to do, we then create the geometry for whatever displays and things that we need. And once we've got that geometry, we then add parameters to our dynamic block. The parameters, in simple terms, are the grips that will display on your block. For instance, with a line, you've got the endpoint, the midpoint, and the other endpoint. And when you've got them selected, you've got those 3 grips. With dynamic blocks, with static blocks, we only have one grip in a static block, and that's the insertion point. With dynamic blocks, we can add additional parameters, and then once we've got those parameters in our dynamic block, we then add actions to those parameters. So we have a move parameter added to our dynamic block, then we would add an action to our dynamic block to do the move or the stretch or whatever it may be. The parameters come in fairly basic and the actions come in fairly basic. So we'll look at defining the parameter properties and what we can do with some of those. We'll have a look at a desk, and we'll have a look at how to modify the parameters to have only certain sizes available in there. And whilst we're working on the dynamic blocks, I'll show you how to test your block whilst you're working on it, rather than closing the block, go out to AutoCAD and testing it there. You can stay within the block editor interface. The block editor interface has additional commands for dynamic blocks. You've possibly seen it before when you've typed BE or BEdit, and you've edited an existing block that is just a static one, and so you could be familiar with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a basic block. So I've got 3 curbs here on screen. Generally, the insertion point with curbs are this point here, the intersection where it joins the existing surface, or the existing bitumen or edge of seal, or whatever it may be. So initially, I'm going to create a single block of this SM1 curve. So I'll just do the normal procedure of creating a block, because that's how all dynamic blocks start out. I'm going to call it SM curbs. I'll specify on screen for the insertion point. So I'm just going to, sorry, I've just got to get that point in here. Sorry, I'll just put a point in. It's a bit hard to find it. My insertion point is there, and my block. So here is a block. If we close this and I insert SM curbs, it has a single grip in it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add SM2 and SM3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these here. I'm going to select the block, right click, I'm going to choose block editor, and I'm going to paste those other profiles that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the SM2, I'm going to put that point at the insertion point over here, which is 0, 0. So I'll grab this, I'll move it, I'll choose that point here, and I'll move it to 0, 0. So we've got that same point here, and I'll do the same with this one here, the SM3. I'm going to move that, use that common point here, and I'll place it over here. So we've got SM3, we've got SM2, and we've got SM1. I'm going to remove these additional options here. If I close the block editor now, I'll save changes, you'll see that the block brings in all 3 curve lines. That's not what we want with the dynamic block. So I'll go back into the block editor once again. And over here, we see whilst we're in the block editor, the background changes color, and we also have this tool palette. The tool palette has an entry for parameters. The parameters are what will become grips in our drawing or in our block. The action, you need a parameter in your drawing before you add an action. And then below that we have parameter sets, which incorporate both parameters and actions to do certain tasks. However, this one here, with this block, all I'm going to do is have a visibility parameter. I don't need any actions to go with the visibility parameter. I'm going to put it somewhere. I'll just put it there. It doesn't matter where you put it. It's a good idea to keep it around the block, you know, somewhere within the block so it displays. And then up here, we have the block editor toolbar, which appears when you start the block editor. So what we're going to go in and change now is we're going to add some visibility states. I'm going to click on visibility states. We have the first one, visibility state O. I'm going to edit that. I can click on the label twice, or I can click on rename. And I'm going to call this SM1. I'm going to create a new visibility state. I'll call this one SM2. I will leave all these as they are, as you can see here. When you create a new visibility state, you can hide all the objects and add additional objects in, or you can show all existing objects in new state. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave visibility of existing objects unchanged, and I'll show you how we modify those settings shortly. So I'll create the third entry, SM3. So here I have 3 states. I've got SM1, SM2, SM3. I could add additional ones. I could add the, the rollover curves, all that sort of stuff, just ensuring that you have the same insertion point. So I've got these 3 states. I'm going to click on OK, and that's all I need in here. So now in this drop-down list up here, we have 3 states, SM1, SM2, SM3. What I'm going to do is going to click on SM1, which was the first one that we created. So this is SM1, but we don't want these ones to appear when we're using the SM1 visibility state. So we highlight what we don't want to display, and we click on this button up here, Make Invisible. If I click on that, those items will disappear. So just to test that at the moment, over on the left-hand side, third item across is Test Block. So whilst we're in the block editor, rather than closing the block editor, we'll click on Test Block, and that will display our block. You'll see here, when I click on the item, we've got our normal insertion point, but we also have this additional grid here. Sorry, this grip here. If I click on that, it will list the 3 states that we just had. So SM1 looks like this. SM2 has SM1, 2, and 3 showing. SM3 will still have the 3 showing. But if I go back to SM1, it will only show SM1. So what we need to do now is add visibility states for both SM2 and SM3. So we've tested our block by using that third item across on the block editor menu. So now we'll click on Close Test Block. So that will close that. I'll just go back to that same drawing I was in. And now I'm back in the block editor. I'm going to change the display to SM2. And in this one, we will get rid of this line work here, and we will get rid of, that one and that one. If I've got my curves correct, undo that one, I just moved it. So SM2, I want to hide that one. And I also want to hide this one. So this will become my SM2 display. I may have 2 and 3 reversed on, I don't recall, but anyway, we'll go to SM3. Hold on, SM2, SM3, and now we're going to hide this one here, and we'll also hide this curve line here. So now if we click on SM1, we'll see SM1, SM2. Yep, I stuffed up that one, I think. 2, 3. Okay, we have a button here, Visibility Mode, and that will show the other line work from the other states. So I need to hide this one, so I'll click on Hide, but I need this one to display. So now I'll come up here to the next button across that says Make Visible. I can toggle this again, and it will just show the line work for the current visibility state. If I have this checked again, I'll have the 3 items displaying. So we'll go back and have a look at SM2. I have really messed up here, sorry. SM2 is that one. SM3 is that one. So I'll make that one visible, make this one invisible. Sorry, invisible. And visible. Okay, So I think I've got it right now. So we go test block. Here's our SM2. I'm going to go into the visibility state here. Sorry, SM1, SM2, it changes to that one. SM3, it changes to SM3. So that's with existing blocks, you can actually bring each block in and add them as a visibility state. So you don't need to actually explode your blocks. If you want, you can just dump them all on top of each other and just change your visibility state. So we've got this in here. We've got it's attached to the left-hand side of the road. We'll say I'll close this one. We'll go back to curbs. So we've got the curbs for the left-hand side of the road. We also need curbs for the right-hand side of the road. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a flip parameter. So on the parameters tab, we'll click flip, and we want it to flip along where the insertion point is. So I'm just going to go vertically with that line. I'll put the flip state just here, and there's our flip icon. You'll see here it's got a little yellow symbol that signifies that there's no action associated with that parameter. So that signifies that we'll need to go down to the action panel. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue with flip. And so over here under actions, we'll choose flip. It's asking to select the parameter. So the parameter that we want to work with is that arrow there. And now it's asking us to select objects. So what we'll do, we'll select all the objects. The reason I select all objects is because if we flip and only SM1, 2 is associated with the flip, only SM1 will flip. The others will stay where they are when you change visibility. So what we're going to do now, you'll see that that little box has now become a flip icon. I'll get rid of this menu here. And over here it tells you it's going to flip 6 objects, and that's what we want. So it's going to flip the whole block. So we'll now go and have a look at test block. So we can click here. Hold on, I didn't include the flip. So I'm going to action, modify selection set, select them all, try again. And for some reason, it's not showing the flip. Well, there's a flip that's only shown up on number 3. The reason that has happened is we come back to test. We'll select this, make it display for SM3, click on display for SM2. Sorry, display on SM2. SM3's on. And SM1. I do have to grab that line as well.
So I suppose, Selwyn, the key thing is here is that when you're adding content into the visibility state, I suppose you've got to be aware that you can actually also, be adding the actual parameter or action into the visibility state in addition to the actual objects.
Yes,
themselves.
yes. If you need to
seems very strange.
It does. You've got to because you may only want to flip this curve, so you would only have the flip activated for that particular curve. Just for that particular curve. Yeah, that was my mistake. I should have added that right at the start and added it to all of the views or each visibility state. But now I've made it visible in all active states. So when I change to SM1, I still have that flip. If I change to SM2, I can flip that one, and you'll see that this visibility state has been added to all of the visibility states. So that's why it appears in each one. Okay, so that's a basic bringing blocks into the one block, into a dynamic block with very basic functionality. All we've looked at is the flip action and the visibility states. Okay, so any questions about that one, Jonathan?
So far, no.
Okay, no problem. So I'll just close out of there, back in here, and sorry, close block editor. And now we're back in our original drawing, and we should have all that stuff, all those settings that we've just done available to us in here in our normal drawing. So if I insert the block, it comes in with those additional grips. Okay, so that's it with just basically modifying a simple block and adding a couple of tools to it, a couple of grips and a couple of actions. So we'll now have a look at a basic desk, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at the stretch and also the move options within that. I'm going to draw a rectangle, very straightforward. I'm going to make it 1 meter by 0.5. So 1 meter along, 0.5 up. So I'm going to make a block out of this. I'll just type block. I'll call it desk. Okay. I'll choose a base point. Just a, it's just a sensible one for what I'm doing here, and the objects that will be part of the block. So it goes straight into the block editor. What we want to do is we're going to put a sink. Actually, we make it a sink. I'll put a sink in the center here. So I'll just put that in the center. And I'll just give it a shape. Okay, so we'll just assume this is a sink, even though I've called it a desk. What we're going to do is we want to stretch this side outwards, like so. So what we're going to do is we're going into parameters, and we're going to do a linear alteration. So what we'll do, we click on linear, where we want it to, where we want the label to be. So what I've done, I've just gone from end to end, and it puts a parameter in here. We can rename the parameter. It's a good idea if you're going to have multiple tools set up in your dynamic block. I'm just going to call it X. So just so we're changing the X. I only want to work on this end here. I don't want it to stretch out this way and this way at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Escape. I'm going to click on that one arrow there and delete it. So I only have this one over here. So the stretch will only go in this direction, or using this line here. So I can stretch this way and I can stretch this way, and this point will stay where it is. We also see we have the exclamation point, which means we've got a parameter in our drawing, but we have no action associated with it. So now we'll go to actions, and we'll do a stretch, because we want to stretch this part of the drawing. So normal stretch, it's asking to select the parameter, so we just choose our X parameter. It's asking for a start point for the stretch. We don't want it to start there, we want it to start over here. So you see on screen, there's a red X. It could be at either end, but this is where we want to stretch from. So I will accept that point up that end by pressing the left button. Now it's asking for a first corner of stretch frame. Same as you would in AutoCAD, just draw a window around your stretch area. And now it's asking us to select the objects. We could just select the rectangle here. However, we do need to select the parameter also. So we'll just go through and we'll select those. And you'll see that they highlight, which signifies that they are part of this group. Press enter, and you'll see now this box here appears. It states that it's a stretch function. And if we click on that, it will tell us over here the different controls we have. So we'll just test that one. So I've got a stretch. I'll only be able to stretch this area here. So I'll click on test block. And now when I click on the block, I should find there's an arrow on the bottom left-hand side of the block. If I click that, you'll see that that block is still a block. However, that line has been stretched across. Okay, not very good because we probably would want the thing to follow in the center, but we're going to have a look at controlling the stretch motion that we have here first. Close block. Sorry, it keeps on going to the other drawing. I might move that across and see if that makes a difference. So we're in the block editor still, and we find that we can stretch freeform along this line. So what we're going to do now is we'll click on the parameter, and you'll see that over here the properties change to whatever has been selected, which is the linear parameter. But if we come down here to value set, the distance type is none, distance minimum is 0, and distance maximum is nothing. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the distance type to increment. If you recall, the length of the desk initially is 1 meter. So here we might want to increment by 0.25, so quarter meter increments. Minimum distance, we don't want to go any smaller than the 2 meters. So here, minimum distance will be 2. We see these little lines on screen. When I've entered that at 2, these ones within our sink area will disappear. So we can only stretch from here outwards at 0.25 spacing. We can also add a maximum distance. You might want the sink to only be able to go to 5 meters in width. So actually, I'll go a bit small. I'll go 4 meters. And now, when we have a look at testing our block, when we click on our block, we'll see we have this, the grip here. If we click on it, you'll see that you have the increments at 0.25 meter spacing. So wherever we come along here, it will snap to those settings that we have. Okay. You can also add additional distance parameters. I'll just add a quick one here, just from here to here. I'll get rid of this arrow here, same as what I was doing on the other one. So I've only got one arrow. So now I'll go and do an action. I'll do a stretch. I'll choose that parameter. Start point of up here. And sorry, I've gone the wrong way there. Sorry guys, I'll just stretch, grab that parameter, that start point, however we want to stretch through here. We've got our area and then we select our parameters. Enter, and you'll see you have another one here. We change the name of distance to Y. So we've got X and Y. Test our block. And now we have a parameter that goes both ways. I haven't added increments or anything like that to the northern face, the Y. So I will select Y, and I'm going over here and I'm going to change it to list. Default list value of 0.5. I'll click on this edit button over here, and I can add specific sizes.
I suppose if this was, say, for example, a pit cell, and this could be lintel sizes, couldn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Stretch them out to, yeah.
And also, if it was a pit, you could draw your pit, draw your inside, change your wall widths and all that sort of stuff using parametrics. So there's a lot of control that you can have over those. So I've added a list of items here: 0.5, 0.75, 1, and 3. So 0.75, sorry, 0.5, 0.75, sorry, 0.5 is here, 75, 1, and 3. So when I test now, I can drag this up and it will only snap to those settings that I had in that list. So you'll see a list works similar to the incremental spacing. However, the incremental spacing is set at certain distances, whereas the list format, it can be any entry that you like. Okay, so I'll close this. You'll recall before there's an issue with the sync staying where it is. What we would like to, yes.
Sorry, just a quick
Yes,
question.
John.
I'm 99% sure I know the answer to this. Now, blocks, dynamic blocks have been around since 2006. Is there anything that you're showing here that is possibly on a more recent version of AutoCAD, or is what you're showing pretty much all sort of your sort of Genesis type dynamic?
We're in 2021. There's been not a lot of changes to the actions and parameters available for dynamic blocks. Basically, the actions are your normal AutoCAD commands like move, rotate, align, array. You can do all those sort of tools in there. So if you have a look here, we've got our basic.
Yeah,
AutoCAD.
They haven't really changed, have they? Since
no. The only thing is the arrowheads have changed, appearance, and the warning messages when you don't have an action applied. That symbology's changed, but pretty much dynamic blocks have been the same from from the first introduction to what they are now.
Yeah, no, that's great. We've got a user using Civil 3D 2018, but I can guarantee.
Yeah, no, there'll be no issues. Same process. Their icons might look slightly different, but you've got the same controls over the tools as you do in the later versions.
That's great. Thanks, Elwyn. Cheers.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so we move back to the sync. What we would like it to do is to move when we alter this one here, this parameter. When it alters, we want the sync to go with it. So what we're going to do is we'll go back to actions. We've already got the parameter. The parameter is the distance, the linear one here. And we want to associate the move to this same parameter. So I'll click on move. It's asking me to select the parameter. So I'll select X, which will associate it with this linear parameter. Base point, I'll use the same one as I did earlier. Now it's asking for objects to move or select objects. So the only one I need to select is the sync, single selection. I've still got additional modifications to do to the block, but we'll just have a look and see what happens when we've added that move to the sync. So you'll see it's moving and it's staying in position with this line work here. However, ideally, we want to keep it centered in the sink. So what we'll do now is close the test. And what we've got down here, we've got our parameter, and these are the parameters that are associated with it. If we hover over, we've got the stretch command and we've got the move command. We want to have a look at the move because we want to tweak this one so that it doesn't move all the way and stay consistently along this side. So click on move and it brings up the properties of the move action. If we have a look down here, the distance multiplier is 1. So when we move across here 1 unit, the sink moves across 1 unit. Ideally, we would move the furniture part of the sink 1 unit, and the sink itself would only move half a unit. So what we'll do here in distance multiplier is 0.5. Rather than moving the full distance in one go, this sink will move in half-meter increment. If you're moving the base, the furniture a meter, the sink will only move half a meter. So test block once more. Click on our block and we'll use this grip here once again. And as we move that, you'll see that the sink is staying in the center of the furniture. So that's what happened when we changed the incremental move. Sorry, click on move. And change the distance, sorry, the distance multiplier to 0.5. So it's moving half the distance of this line here. Any questions on that one, Jonathan?
No, none as yet. No, okay. I learned something with the distance multiplier there. I wasn't aware that one was in there, so it was a neat little one to add in.
So yeah, and if you look here, it's gone to the center, and I can still modify it backwards. So it'll stay at the front of the cabinet, no matter where you drop the edge. So it will stay centered. Okay, we'll move on to something a little bit more complex. What we've got here is a call out, like a section call out. So if we have a look at this one here, it's got multiple parameters and actions associated to it. I've got a stretch action. I've got a rotate action. When I click rotate, this rotates and the arrowhead rotates. I've also got here a flip action. If I click on flip, this arrow and this arrow should flip and point in the opposite direction. And I've also got a flag grip, flag on, flag off. So if you're using, if you want the line work to show up, flag on, flag off will turn off the arrows and the little arrow header that's here. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to reset this block back to what it was. I'm going to copy it and we're going to reproduce what I've just shown you. So I'll explode that. Okay, and I'm going to make a block. So I'll go block. It's got a couple of attributes in it. We won't worry about the effect of those because they really have no effect. It's just the order that they're created in.
Also, Selwyn, it's a quick plug for the fact that your blocks webcast was, I knew I missed something, it was blocks and attributes. So yeah, if you get a chance and want to know more about the attributes, quick plug there, Selwyn, sorry.
Yep, no
blocks
problem.
And attributes webcast, which will explain how Selwyn did that. Thank you.
That's all right. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to give it a different name. Let's call it sec. And we'll insertion point, I'll make the center and I'll choose all those. Okay, so we've got a basic block now. If we close the block editor, save changes, there's no intelligence on this block. It's just a normal block. If you insert it, it'll be just like a normal block. So now click on it, right click, block editor, and we're going to add a visibility item. So click on visibility. I'll put it just here. Come up to our visibility states, and I'll rename and I'll call it flag on. And I'll do another one, flag off. So we've got flag off. If we have a look at flag on, everything's on. So with flag off, we want to make this disappear, and we want this to disappear as well as this one here. So we go invisible, choose those, choose these ones here, and we'll choose that line. So I'll just set that. So if we have a look at flag off, that's what it's going to appear like. Flag on, that's what it's going to appear like. Okay. So we want to be able to modify this one here. Actually, we'll have a quick look at that while we're here. So click on here, there's our grip, flag off, flag on. Okay, we want to be able to stretch this from here, you know, so it spans whatever we're going to create the section of. So what we're going to do here, we go back to parameters, linear, and I'm going to pick from here to here. I'm not renaming these just because we're running out of time at the moment. So I want it to stretch outwards this way, not this way. So I will highlight this triangle here and delete it, so the other one remains. Okay, we've got this alert here saying there's no action applied. So we go to actions. We want to add a stretch action. So click on stretch. It says select parameter, which is the distance parameter. Start point, that point there will do. And then we'll put a window around the stuff that we want to stretch. So we'll go here and we'll choose that section there to stretch. Press enter to complete the command. So we now have a stretch action associated with distance. Test block again. It's a good idea to test your blocks every time you make a change, because you can see here that that other one didn't come through. So flag on. Okay, that should be right. I've just made them visible. And I still haven't got it. Bother. Okay, we'll just ignore that one for the moment. We'll add a rotation. Rotation. We want it to rotate around the center. And I'm going to have it here. It doesn't matter where we finish it. And I'm going to place it on our circle. We need to highlight this one here, and we'll change, angle. And we'll change that to 360, just so we can go all the way around. We want to be able to control the rotation by using this grip here. However, we'll add the grip to this side so it's in line with the line. And now we'll go to actions, rotate, select the parameter, and we're going to select the objects that will rotate. So the objects that will rotate are these ones here and this one here. We want the view number, sheet number, and this horizontal line to stay where they are. So enter, test block, and we should have a rotate on it. Okay, so you'll see that the 1 and the 101 are staying where they are. The flag is rotating. Flag off, flag on. We might need to flip through here. You know, the section may have to go downwards, So we'll add a flip action. We'll just go through the center. So it's going to flip along that line here. I'll add the flip state just in here. And now we'll add an action, a flip action. Choose the flip and the items we want to flip. So we only want to select that arrow and that arrow there. Test block. Highlight again. Flip. And you can rotate. Sorry, I haven't selected enough objects for the flip state. That should have been included. So you go through, you keep on testing, making sure that it's working as you would expect. Something like this does take a little while to sort out, to work out. Good. Let's try to make that one appear. And I can't. Sorry, guys. Any questions, Jonathan?
No, not at the moment, guys. If you've got any questions around what we're showing, please fire something into the Q&A. Certainly, at the moment, I have to say the call-outs, the call-out that you're showing here, particularly, used to be a big bugbear of mine when doing design. Just trying to get this thing in the right position, in the right scale, meeting the requirements, whatever the width was that you're trying to show for your section. Certainly, the dynamic, having the dynamic features within this block are extremely helpful for this particular block alone.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I found the same thing.
Now, I appreciate it. It's worth us investigating this a bit more because, look, at the end of the day, guys, you're always going to have experiences where nothing works 100% the first time. And I think the whole test case that Selwyn's showing is important because it's important that when you go through, you're trying stuff like this, that you get a sense as to why something might not be working the way it should. And we're still not quite there with that one, by the looks of things.
No. Look, it may take a little while. I've got this one here, and I'm not sure what that one's associated with.
No problem.
It's a linear parameter. It's this one here.
Mm.
So, yeah, maybe
Is there a parameter actually? Is there an action actually associated with it? It's almost
that one. That's your flip. That's your distance.
There it is. Yeah. Stretch 7 objects.
And that's associated with that.
Mm.
The only way, I'll try again.
Just to try, that's exactly it. Look, I suppose the good thing about them is that it's pretty quick. Once you get the hang of these, and I suppose the good thing is that Selwyn's showing these at a very basic level, which, I've seen webcast videos, training, etc., where people just tend to jump in and they're showing you on an extremely complicated drawing, and we're just trying to show you the simplicity of these things in a very simple fashion, so that you guys can go away and start to think, oh, actually, where can I apply these? Title sheets is a good one. So if you have title sheets that have different frames or different setups for the content that goes into the title sheet, you can use dynamic blocks there. There's some really good spots where you can begin to incorporate this, and for some reason this block does not want to have.
It just doesn't want to do it.
Doesn't want to do it. We can prove that it works.
If you look at one I prepared earlier.
How convenient.
That's we'll just have a look and.
There you go. Reference line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's pretty much what I've got, but I'm not sure why it's not appearing. Apologies on that one, guys, but that's pretty much it with the dynamic blocks, the basic sort of blocks. So up here you have your parameters, which you basically think of them as grips. Oh, another one, hold on, I just thought, I'll just close this one. I'm going to create a
Just while you're doing that, Selwyn, really interesting question about AutoCAD LT. and dynamic blocks. I don't think there's any difference with the blocks in LT, is there, or am I wrong? They should be able
LT
to.
doesn't have dynamic.
It doesn't at all. There you go.
It's like BricsCAD. It can't create dynamic blocks. It can display them.
Display them only. Okay.
Yes.
There you go, Dale. Yep.
So I'm just going to create a simple block. I'm going to call it a valve. Say we've got a water main, and we have to insert this block of a stop valve. So what we're going to do, we're going to create I'll just draw a couple of polylines. I'll draw a spline. And
first time I've seen someone use a spline in a webcast deliberately, Selwyn.
Okay. So I'm going to insert the valve, and if we have a look, it just it will attach to the line work, like this. So what we're going to do is I'll remove that one. I'll edit this block editor. Simple one, parameters, alignment, pick the point you want to align with, F8 to make ortho on. Simple one, an alignment parameter. I won't test it. Close block editor, save changes to the valve. I'll bring the valve in, and then when you're going along your line, you'll see it will rotate automatically to the line work. Same with the spline. Okay.
See, that one alone is just having that just on any block, just having that one single parameter, I have to say, is extremely useful. Just to save the time of trying to rotate something, particularly
right.
when you're trying to rotate to a curved object and trying to get that that instantaneous kind of curve point or UCS point. That's an extremely good one just to nibble on to the end of a block. Really good.
And I'll just do a wipeout just to add a little bit to this one. So just to that point, and I'll go from that point to that one, to that one. I'm not worried about layers or anything like that today, so yeah, ignore my bad drafting. So I've added a wipeout. So now when we add that valve, that wipeout will actually cut out that line work behind, which is handy. Rather than you add your valve and then you've got to delete the line work underneath or something like that, and then it becomes segments of lines, where just add a wipeout to your block and it will hide the line work behind. Okay, I'll just do a simple desk again. Doesn't matter what size. Block. Let's call it D for desk. Pick a base point at the midpoint. Grab that. Add an alignment. Midpoint. Horizontal. Close. Save. Insert the desk. And then, this might be all in your building or something that you're constructing. And whenever you insert it, if it's got something it can attach to, it will. So this one, there's nothing to attach in there. So that one's attaching. So here, if you want it to go the opposite way, just move your cursor slightly one side or the other of the line work and it will flip. Or you can go in simply and block editor once again. Okay. Parameters, flip. Base point there, we'll go that way. Label location, we'll put that on the other end because the insertion point's down there. And we're going to add a flip action. Close block editor, save changes. And now if we have a look here, we've got a flip action on that one.
Just think how quickly you can do this with pits. Trying to get your pits aligned to a road that, or an edge of bitumen or a curb, etc., that is not necessarily linear or is linear, and you have to go in and rotate them. Just having the alignment and then the flip at the same time. Imagine what you could then do by having multiple pits embedded within that one block with the visibility states.
That's
you know,
right.
you've effectively got one block that does everything. Just one quick question, Selwyn.
Yes.
Leon's asked a question about whether or not we can override any of the parameters when we're inserting a block, and I suppose it's sort of similar with attributes and things, whether or not you can override any of those preset items.
No, the preset items will come in as they are. The only way to overwrite them is to actually modify your block, or depending upon what your action is trying to do. If you don't want the flip to be in action, just don't use the flip. You've got the option of using the additional grips in there, but they're not compulsory.
No. Okay.
With the alignment option, if you turn your snaps off, it will override the. Sorry. Shift. I thought it was Shift or Alt. No, see, it's going to snap every time.
Yeah, so Leon's question is quite interesting. Yeah, it's along the lines of, well, what if I don't want it to do that? Well,
you'll with the amount of time you'll save using the alignment, the amount of time that it takes to put the block in and rotate it to where you want, won't be that much.
No.
You've added 70 or 80 blocks, and you've got that one that you don't want to use the alignment for. Just insert it and move it into place, or copy one of the other ones. So if I copy this, it won't snap. When I'm inserting, it will, or if I'm moving it around
via the grip, yes.
Yeah, I've got ortho on, so it's if I use that grip to move it, it will align. If I move it and I use a different point, you'll see that the alignment won't take any action. Whereas if you use the grip, it will align. So yeah, there's no way of turning the grips off or the parameters off that are in your block. The only way is basically to ignore them and don't change them.
Great.
And then when you click in your drawing, all those grips are gone, similar to what with your AutoCAD grips. So none of that stuff prints, only the blocks that you've created. Okay. All right, that's about it for me, Jonathan, I think.
No, thank you very much, Selwyn. That's fantastic.
It's fairly basic, a little bit more advanced in places, but a basic introduction to dynamic blocks. There's a lot more that you can do with them than what I've shown you today. And it's worth having a look through here at the parameters and actions, and also the parameter sets, which is a combination of parameters and actions. I used to use these when I first started using dynamic blocks, but I found that it was actually easier to add a parameter than add the actions that I want. Okay, you've also got block lookup tables as well. So you might have, like with your pits, you might have them only a certain size, 1.2 by 0.6. You can actually tell it to only use specific sizing for your blocks. It's a little bit more advanced, not hard to set up, but it's worth looking at if you've got specific sizes of things that need to be scaled in X, Y, or something like that. And it will change its display to match what's in the properties table. But yeah, have a play around with parameters. If you go wrong, just undo, and just remember, continually test your block unless you're really familiar with the commands, because as you see with the call out that I did before, it's going to take me a while to sort out what the issue is with the one I've created with this parameter not appearing. It's something to do with visibility, but as we're limited with time, I don't have time to go through and work that one out, but you should have the basic ideas of what can be done with a dynamic block. That's quite handy. You've got your section label, or you can have your section lines in there. So over here, I've got another one, section labels. I've got visibility states in that one. I've got detail, so it just changes detail, and elevation. I've also got, these are a couple of attributes in here, and when it's inserted in paper space, it will grab the viewport scale if there's only one viewport in that layout and insert that scale into there. Fields will be another session at some stage down the track. We've already covered the attributes. So, Jonathan,
Well, that was beautifully segued into the fact that we're just about to discuss future webcasts, fields being one of them. So thanks for those of you that have stayed on to the end here. We will just very quick, the Q&A panel, I'm going to have to, sorry, just because I'm going to be running other things now, I'm going to have to shut down. But thanks for those of you that have submitted yet again, some really good questions coming through on the Q&A panel. Just very quickly, a poll I'm going to run now, which is really just to get a sense of what people are interested in seeing going forward. You're going to see a poll in front of you now. You can check as many boxes as you want. If you want to see all of the webcasts at some point that you can see on the screen in front of you, please go ahead and check them. I'm hoping you guys can see it because so far nobody is. Oh, fantastic. Some people are responding. There we go. It doesn't matter if you go and check one or go and check all of them, but the one that gets really the most responses, which some of you have clicked on, here we go, it's all coming in now. Results coming in live will be kind of the order in which we proceed with our future webcast events. So at the moment, it looks like XREFs, fields, parametrics are all kind of in that top tier. In fact, that's and customization. So very, very close with some of these responses. So I'll just leave that running for a second. And Selwyn, I'll just share my screen. Yep. What we'll do is just mention a couple of things. First of all, this recording will be on YouTube. For those of you that are interested, next week we'll be running a Civil 3D template fundamentals, obviously related to Civil 3D, and then we've got a couple of interesting civil site design webcasts later on in the month, and keep your eyes peeled for the newsletter, which will be coming around with registration. However, if you are interested in registering for a webcast, go ahead and go to this website here. I think previous webcasts we've been putting the .com, which unfortunately won't work. So it's .com.au. You can go here, provide us with feedback as well. If you've got any webcast suggestions that you've got, feel free to pop them in there, and we'll take a note of them. But on that, we are just over time, but thank you, Selwyn, for that fantastic informatory webcast. That was really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for everyone who attended.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And yeah, we look forward to catching up with as many of you next week. We'll take on board the poll here, which I think is going to be parametrics by the looks of things. Happy days. And yes, we look forward to we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.